our next speaker, please welcome Adnan Masood, SVP Talent and OD Bank Islami. Adnan will be talking about perception gaps in recruiting and candidate experience. Adnan, please come on stage.
Islami. I've recently returned to Pakistan, so it's amazing to be here in front of all of you. My topic today is about perception gaps in recruiting and candidates experience. So हमारी language में it's about employer क्या समझता है और candidate के साथ क्या होता है when they get into an interview process. So I'll take you through the journey. I've got limited time, so I want to make sure I'll finish it. So I'll go through at the higher level, and you can ask me questions in the end. Right, so I'll just speak at the high level. Feel free to get in touch if you want to talk about more about this topic. So what's perception? We all know what perception is, right? We all have ways of developing perception. But in a sort of organizational context, perception is about individuals selecting, interpreting, developing a coherent and meaningful picture about an environment. So employment context, it's about developing a perception about a prospective employer. So quite a lot of you go for the interviews. You recently given an interview. जब interview देते हैं तो क्या होता है? जब interview के लिए जाते हैं, interview से जाने से पहले क्या होता है? How do you develop your mindset? How do you develop your perception about that employer before you actually go and work with them, even before you get the job offer? So I'll just talk you through the journey of that. What is perception gap? Perception gap is very simple. What you expect and what you get. सोच के क्या है होता क्या है? So what do you make of this picture? Give us a shout. What do you think? Well, what it is? It's a light note.
Both of them are mouse.
Okay, great.
Mickey is a wall-looking mouse that has made a perception since we were kids. But that mouse is just a rat.
Right.
So
Okay.
no likes, no comments, no share.
All right.
Mickey Mouse has all of that.
Great.
Or
Great.
intelligent something people get attracted to.
Yeah.
Common and simple life, no.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else?
He was smiling.
Yeah. Very excited, right?
Yeah.
He's obviously the main character. He has to be excited. The rat doesn't get the attention. But funny enough, actually, we're calling the other one as a rat. People see a mouse, right?
Yeah.
Mickey has numeric value with the same symbols.
So very interesting perspective, right? Go on.
Mickey has 20 comments, 1500 likes, and 970 friends.
Exactly. So you see the different perspective. So that's what we're saying, mind the perception gap. So perception gap could be very popular character, gets lots of likes and messages and friend requests. On the other hand, the regular mouse actually, probably just kicked out of the house every single day, right? On the other hand, Mickey Mouse thinking, actually, I'm a mouse, the other one's a mouse as well, so I'm sending a lot of messages to the other mouse, but actually there's no response because there's a gap between their language as well. What's been said has not been received by the other mouse. Right? So mind the perception gap. So we'll just talk about how actually employers believe or tend to believe when they advertise a job. And when candidates come and apply for the job, what's the experience been like? And why there's a gap between the employer and the candidate. So how do candidates develop their experience? How do they develop their perception? So they will develop their perception during the interview process, they will do the application process before they even apply for the job, when the job is advertised, when they see the advertisement. So there are few stages to it. So सबसे पहले तो start करते हैं job search में. Job search करना कितना आसान है? कहाँ पे advertising job? How easy it is for them to actually get to their job board? कहाँ पे advertising? So I know lots of actually organizations go on the Rosie. They don't necessarily advertise on LinkedIn. So how easily accessible that platform is? They go to the job application process. Job application process could be a fairly simple job portal, or it could be a very intuitive, user-friendly job application portal. So you see, this is started. The candidates started to build up their perception about the organization. So we talked about Generation Z, millennials. They perceive and look at things very differently. than some of the people who are from, earlier time. So some of the people, job experience may not be very valuable. They just say, the application process, I don't really care. As long as I get the job, I'm alright with it. They move on to talk about communication, the feedback. So the interview process में क्या होता है? कि we don't really add a lot of value as an employer. Don't necessarily add a lot of value to candidates. Actually, you value ले लेते हैं उनसे. वो कैसे लेते हैं? Because the guy who's coming for the interview, or girl who's coming for the interview, actually sacrificing their daytime. They're taking time off. They're making a lot of effort. They're preparing for the interview. They're arranging their childcare. They're probably taking, annual leave from work, or telling the employer to manage their work dentist के पास जा रहा है. So they're making a lot of things up to actually come for the interview. हम क्या करते हैं? We don't necessarily communicate with them. Okay, somebody's there. So ask them to come for an interview. 10 o'clock interview time. We start the interview 11 o'clock. So are you respecting that candidate's time? Or actually, what sort of perception you're developing about that, about your own organization? I know, a really busy schedule, it's really, tough time, we've been doing the X, Y, and Z. So yeah, that's alright, we'll start the interview now later. और फिर क्या होता है? Interview होता है. Do we actually talk about the interview structure? Do we communicate that in advance? Or we just basically, send them an invite, that's the interview, we don't even know, the guy doesn't even know who's on the interview panel. What is the structure of the interview? And once the interview is finished, do we actually give feedback to everybody? Or we just go to very selected people, or maybe the guy or girl who's been, when I say guy, it means everybody, right? We just give a feedback to the person who's been appointed. We don't even give feedback. We just say, you'll be glad to know you've been selected. We don't talk about why actually we selected you. We are not very clear and coherent about giving a constructive feedback, let alone the people who weren't successful. The people who were successful, we just say, fantastic, we'd love to have you on board. And we actually don't talk about it because an interview is never 100%. So it's always useful to give feedback about how the interview has gone on. And then it moves on from the interview stage to onboarding, and onboarding if everything went really well, how they were treated at the start, whether you met their expectations, have you taken any feedback from them, so on and so forth. And all of those processes, actually, the steps that should be gone through, helps candidate to develop perception about the employer, the image of the employer, their products, and how they've been treated, whether they were successful or not. Right, so far so good? Yeah? Okay, cool. We'll move on. A survey was carried out, 150 people were asked about whether it's really important for them to develop a perception or have a good image of the organization before they accept the job offer. Predominantly, people have said between 7 to 10. They said yes, it's important, very important for them to actually have a positive experience. Do we agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah? Do we agree with that? Do we agree with that from the perspective of an employer? So quite a few of you would work in HR, assuming बहुत सारे लोग HR में काम करते हैं, training, learning, development. तो जब हम job advertise करते हैं, interviews करते हैं, क्या हम ऐसा सोचते हैं?
Yes.
We do. Okay, great.
I feel not the majority. Yes, there are people and professionals and there are organizations who focus on this area. But mostly I've seen and experienced that yes, majority do it.
Do we agree with that? Majority करते हैं नहीं करते?
It depends.
I mean, I don't know where you work and who you represent, so just be frank about it.
See, I believe it depends from position to position. Well, when you have a bulk or mass hiring going on, you don't really focus on experience rather than onboarding
Okay, fair enough.
And when it comes to your senior management hiring, then you create the experience for them. That's what I feel.
See, बड़ा interesting point है.
Yeah.
और ऐसा होता है. I lead a talent team, and I manage the countrywide hiring, and ऐसा बिल्कुल होता है. We give a lot of importance to people who really matter to the organization. We make an extraordinary experience for them. But it's not consistent, right? So in the new world where actually we talk about inclusive, meaning inclusive employer choice, are we actually really inclusive? Are we actually respecting everybody their time, their efforts when they come in, whether they're selected or not? And do we actually provide the same service to everybody? And then we say, we don't do that. We actually say, I'd like to be treated fairly and equally. Actually, we don't do it ourselves.
Yeah, and there's another aspect to that which is more impactful, the one hiring for that one senior manager or the higher.
Exactly. What matters the most?
Yeah.
Who are these people who will go away from this organization when they are hired with the experience that you're leaving them? I'll share an interesting story moving forward. So what job seekers are saying? They're saying 58% of job seekers have declined an offer because of the experience they've had in the interview process. The experience wasn't very positive. ये data and sources, there's one source at the bottom.
And what I'm just trying to
G.
prove, is this the local market data or a global market?
Achha, this is predominantly the global market data. I was struggling to figure out data from local market, unfortunately. Data.
I'm just trying to see from the perspective of Pakistan market, where most important factor for employees is going to be the employer brand that they're going.
Of course.
Supposing you apply for a big brand, then the experience, you may have some customer experience, but you're still looking for the job. And secondly, 58% decline offer about the experience. If somebody does that research, we may find a different decline.
Yeah. I'm sure data would vary. Depending on demographics. Certainly the demographics makes a huge difference. I'll come on to the Pakistani market as well. I'll give the data actually that I have. So that makes it more resonate with the people over there. Absolutely. So it's a global market data. I've struggled to get the local data, but what I'm talking about is the concept. So sometimes we get bogged down into data a lot. Sometimes we bog down into stats. What I'm trying to talk about is the concept and the perspective that actually employers can develop after looking at the international global data. Because if you look at the international market, candidates are coming in, they're all having similar sort of mindset. Social media has made our lives so much easier and relatable across the globe. So I've worked in 3 different continents, and our young generation, they all pretty much think exactly along the same lines. It's just the different environment, the culture is different, and how they've been brought up. But the mindset and thinking process is fairly similar. So another survey revealed people who've declined a job offer because they've not had a positive experience at work. In the interview process. 90% of people said the compensation and benefits didn't meet my expectations. And it actually does happen. It does happen. I'm countrywide recruitment for Bank Islami, and I've seen it happening. The first one is not as evidenced compared to the other ones. So second one makes sense. I can very much relate to it. The roles and responsibilities were very different from what they expected, or what was it actually advertised. And it happened with me several times. My job advertised me, HR, etc. I went for the interview, and then we basically conclude the process, say actually your role है वो जो हमने कहा था वो इस तरह का नहीं है, title इस तरह का नहीं है, change हो गया है because of the change in the dynamics and demographics, और board ने ये बोल दिया है, executive ने ये decide किया है, हमारे जो demand है इसको ये है. So it's basically just trying to make sure कि employer को advertise कर रहे हैं, they stick to that. Because people are coming and applying for the job and making all of those efforts to have the role they've actually applied for. Not the role, but what you have come up with. Sometimes people will compromise. Most of the time people will say, actually, I'm quite focused and ambitious, career person, and I like to stick to the role that I actually applied for. People were worried about the COVID safety policy. They dislike the workplace environment. So sometimes when I make a job offer, मैं job offer करने के बाद candidate को लेकर आता हूँ और उनको पूरी टीम से मिलवाता हूँ और उनके 3-4 फ्लोर्स पे organization में लेके जाता हूँ. So I just want to make sure before they accept my offer, they go and have a look. What's it like to be here in my bank?
I think 58%
58% of the people who were interviewed.
who rejected the offer.
Yeah.
I think one reason is because the government went and they Google the experience.
there are a number of factors in there, yeah. The number of factors in there.
The corporate ban is not, generally it's not part of the interview process. It's an offer letter. So I think it
Well, should also, people who have effective understanding of what the transmission of the organization.
because they have to accept what are.
So then, absolutely, I will say that there are a number of variants in there. There are a number of variants in there. So my focus is the job application process and actually the whole offer closes with comms and benefits as well. So certainly there's a lot of back and forth goes on in there. So that is also part of people not accepting the job offer. But it's actually different than people developing a perception and having a positive experience in the interview process. अक्सर ही होता है कि जब डेटा लेकर आए तो डेटा में बहुत सारे इंटेलेक्चुअल्स एक्चुअली वे से एक्चुअली ये डेटा इट डजंट मेक एनी सेंस इस डेटा में मजा नहीं आ रहा है ऑल दैट सो आई गेट दैट मैंने बहुत सारे साइंटिस्ट के साथ काम किया and they actually stick with the data and they don't talk about the holistic picture. So actually what I'm trying to say कि हमारा recruitment process, organization के recruiting process, so at some time it sucks, right? It really does, and all we need to do is improve. Or ये भी relative term है. You know, if you go and work for Google, apply for Google or Facebook or big tech organization, they spend billions of dollars in their recruiting process, which is very different from a small startup. But hopefully, I'm not talking about money, I'm talking about general principles. And the steps, the simple steps actually organizations can take to develop a positive candidate experience. Yeah? So far so good? We all alright? Okay. Moving on.
You want the brand on your CV then?
True. Very true. Branding makes a huge difference. Like interesting brands, and that's why I've got a brand example over here. I'm glad I've got this actually. Otherwise I was in trouble. Let's forget about this bad experience. Let's forget about the numbers. What we are saying, the people who had bad experience in the interview process, they've actually gone on to talk to friends and said actually, nice organizations that they can't go because of X, Y, and Z reason. And they've actually gone on to stop buying their products, cancel their subscription, or actually gone on to the social media and said, okay, X, Y, and Z, I didn't really have a good time over there. They will talk about it. They're not going to sit on the dinner table and just pass on to two friends. They will actually talk about it. रुकेंगे नहीं, आप वो basically talking. Social media has provided that opportunity. 37% left their negative review online because they've had a poor experience in the interview or application process. Similarly, a lot of people actually gone on to leave a positive note because they were really happy with the interview process. So there's a direct correlation between candidates leaving the organization with positive and negative experience. Very interesting. So I read this case study last night. So there was a hairdresser, Louise from Manchester in England, and she applied for a hairdresser job. She had no qualification, but she did a very good CV, and she had amazing experience. She was very creative in her job, so she got shortlisted. But basically, going for a huge organization. So we're talking about a brand. So Virgin Media, Virgin is a huge brand. She was called in for the interview. But actually, when people had received her CV didn't really stand out compared to some of the other people who were really qualified, who were training from large hairdressing organizations, Tony and Guys and all that. She actually had a very poor. She had a decent interview, but during the interview, the receptionist didn't treat her very well. She got into the interview. Interviewer actually left the interview for 5 minutes taking a phone call, and the interviewer came back and said, yeah, I've heard what I wanted to hear. I'm really sorry, unfortunately you couldn't be selected. So because her background aisa tha, she wasn't treated as other candidates were treated. Louise left the organization, interview process. She gone on, उसने जाने के बाद Virgin Media से अपनी subscription cancel की, और director HR को letter लिखा talent को कि मैंने अपनी subscriptions cancel कर दी Virgin के साथ because I had poor interview experience. And she gone on to talk to her friends on social media. Really poor experience of Virgin. I'm cancelling, and that actually has influenced पॉजिटिवली जो डायरेक्टर ऑफ हायरिंग था उसने रियलाइज किया कि इस तरह के और बहुत कितने कस्टमर्स होते होंगे जो इस जर्नी में जाकर हमारे सब्सक्रिप्शन या हमारे प्रोडक्ट्स खरीदना बंद कर देते होंगे. A lot of organizations over here जिनकी products and services, HRSGs provide services. So if people start developing a perception about your organization and they will talk to their friends, yeah, I don't want to go there. Zafar Sabhi organization, Fan Sabhi organization, their training program was like, mujhe maza nahi aaya, yeah, he was too bossy in the training program. They leave with not very positive experience from that program and they will talk to their friends and families and social media. So Virgin Media actually realized that जो लोग हमारे पास negative experience लेके जाते हैं interview से, they're losing about $5 million annually. So it makes a huge difference. So the point I'm to make that large organizations, if they go away with poor experience, candidate poor experience can still cost them money. Pakistan is relatively lower because the employability ratio and employment obviously ratio is, unemployment ratio is quite high over here compared to the developed countries. I'll talk about in the end कि as a result हुआ क्या, इसने फिर डायरेक्टर वेचा ने क्या changes की to move on. Unfortunately हमारे employers के perspective है ना, मैं पाकिस्तान की काफी बात करता हूँ because मैं 1 साल से पाकिस्तान में काम कर रहा हूँ, so I can see a huge drastic difference between the employers back in UK and employers over here or globally. I work in America as well. They believe that candidates जो poor experience ले रहे हैं, it's unfortunately business as usual for us. It's nothing personal. It's business. Candidate बाहर बैठा है, wait कर रहा है. I'm really sorry, I was busy. I was talking to the CEO. I was talking to another director. I was having a meeting. I was having another interview. I was having a chat actually with somebody. I was on the phone. It's all right. Interview process आधा घंटा late हो गया, कोई बात नहीं. 20 लोगों का आपने HR मैनेजर की इंटरव्यू किया, एक को फीडबैक दिया, बाकी 19 लोगों को पता ही नहीं हुआ क्या. उनको ये भी नहीं पता कि जॉब मिली कि नहीं मिली, और नहीं मिली तो क्यों नहीं मिली. They're wondering. So we're not helping people to grow by not giving them feedback, by not respecting their time, by not valuing them as a professional, by taking their feedback. कि आपका इंटरव्यू प्रोसेस कैसा था? क्या इंटरव्यू प्रोसेस में ऐसा कोई आपको गैप नजर आया जहाँ पे हम इम्प्रूव कर सकते हैं? Did you enjoy the interview process? Do you think that you were treated fairly in the interview process? So we don't do that. Pakistan, I've noted, it's quite common. The mind is right. If I've got the job, I'm the guy I'm the employee, I'm the boss who's advertising the job. They need me. I don't need them actually. Moving on. मैं थोड़ा सा local context यहाँ पे लेकर आता हूँ. Unavoidably, there are different types of recruitment. कुछ recruitment होती हैं जो कि easy high turnover easy होती हैं. हमारे बैंक में business development officer या sales officer is a high turnover job and easy to hire job. If you're a graduate, come and work for my bank. If you like to sell products, come and work for our bank. We'll give you training for a couple of months and you'll be good to go. If you don't like it, 6 months you leave the organization. तो हमारे वहाँ पर बहुत सारी jobs होती हैं जो कि high turnover easy to hire होती हैं. Then we've got jobs actually business as usual hiring. With some effort, employers can hire and fill those positions. Right? काफी jobs ऐसी भी होती हैं जो कि बहुत difficult to hire होती हैं. So in Bank Islami, we've got corporate functions about 4,000 employees. About 1,000 people belongs to support and sort of part with business functions like consumer finance, corporate finance, treasury, finance departments, marketing, HR, compliance, etc., etc. जब मैंने last year I took charge of Bank Islami's hiring, recruitment, there we had about 250 positions, or vacant positions, and they were all difficult to hire specialist positions. और हम data quantify नहीं करते हमारे लोगों में, it's not a common practice. A lot of organizations do that, but it's not a common practice. So I quantified in not having those business critical positions, how much is costing the organization. अगर एक branch manager नहीं है, branch manager is supposed to make about 20 million to 50 million in a quarter. तो एक quarter में एक position खाली है, so this is how much is costing the organization. So actually we don't pay attention to that. Okay, if there's a position left vacant and it's a critical business position, it makes costing your organization a lot of money. So I'll just give you a local context. Bank Islami में हमने 2019 में 1500 लोग hire किए. During pandemic we hired about 1,000 people, and 2021 के अंदर we hired 2,000 plus people. So this is how much we need people, and there's a frantic competition between banks. People being poached. मैंने किसी को ऑफर की, उसने मेरी ऑफर आगे एक्सेप्ट की, और किसी और बैंक में इंटरव्यू देने के लिए गया, उसने वहाँ पर जाके सेम ऑफर को बोला कि मुझे ये ऑफर हो गई है, मैं 100 टेबल था, 150 मुझे ऑफर हुई है, आप 175,000 दे दें तो मैं आपके पास आया था. So business critical position and business as usual hiring as well. Would you believe that in trade finance, which is a support administrative function, we've got 50 people in that department. They run across, Pakistan का function वो देखते हैं. It's a fairly administrative, mundane sort of function. I hired 20 people from graduates, and half of them left within 8 to 10 months. They got trained, they moved on. Double the offer. 40,000 का hire किया, 60,000, 70,000, 80,000 चले गए. It's like that. So there's a frantic competition in banking sector. At least I can talk about banking sector. So bringing the local contacts, कि जहाँ हमें पता है कि अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट रेशियो पाकिस्तान में बहुत हाई है, वहाँ पर स्किल्ड लोगों का कंपटीशन भी बहुत हाई है. मैं ग्रेजुएट ट्रेनिंग ऑफिसर्स का बैच हर महीने, हर 3 to 4 weeks रन करता हूँ, and I hire at least 20 to 25 people. Management training officers we're looking for, and I've been trying to hire management training officer, they get paid about 70,000, 65 to 70,000 rupees, and they got really fast track. They get into 18 months training, to 2 years they become assistant manager, 4 years they become manager. And I've run 2 sessions at least, assessment centers, और मैं उसमें सिर्फ 3 लोग hire कर चुका हूँ तक से. I've only hired 3 people. Majority of them actually failed the assessment center. Half the people actually didn't turn up for the interview.
They work with me for 6 months. They didn't leave because of the recruitment experience.
They didn't leave because of the recruitment experience. What I'm trying to say is that जो हमारा concept है पाकिस्तान में, जो we talked about के it's nothing personal, it's all business. कि we don't really necessarily provide a good interview experience. What I'm trying to show over here कि jobs, जब हम कहते हैं jobs कम है, मैं बताना चाह रहा हूँ कि jobs बहुत है. So it's very important for us to actually provide a positive interview experience to all the candidates. And makes a huge difference. Actually, they go on to talk about your organization if they go away with a positive experience. Yeah? Okay. So, we no longer live in the dark ages anymore. If your candidate is not happy, they're not going to go and talk to their uncle and auntie and mom and dad and their friends at a dinner table. They'll go onto social media and be an outrage to their account, and be an outrage Facebook user, a troller, somebody who's going to say that organization is so trash, I'm not going to buy anything from that organization, I'm not going to bank with that bank because they're treating me so poorly. So that makes my argument, I support my argument over here, actually is huge, is hugely important actually to provide a positive experience in the interview process, pre-interview, during the interview and post-interview. So whilst there are challenges, there are opportunities ahead as well. So I'm trying to make a connection between positive candidate experience to positive employee experience, which leads to employee engagement. Make sense? Somebody who's happy in the interview process, go on to start a very good job, they come and say, interview process will like, yeah, organization wants me, they're really looking forward to have me, I feel so valued. The next stage, really fantastic onboarding process. I'm so happy, so excited to get on with it. And they become really engaged employee. And we know that disengaged employee costs a lot to the organization. Against the US data, my apologies with that. But what I'm trying to say is that data is relatable. Because disengaged employee जो पाकिस्तान में होगा, वो अमेरिका में भी होगा. Engaged employee जो यहाँ पर होगा, वो internationally भी होगा. I don't know how many organizations actually work on staff engagement or staff work experience. Possibly, as you said, कि जो बड़ी organization, multinational, they pay a lot of attention to it. So it costs US economy about $450 billion every year, a disengaged employee. So you provide the positive experience that leads on to positive candidate experience to lead on to the positive experience at work and employee engagement. So what it says over here, 50% of the candidates who gave the experience their lowest rating, they said, okay, I'm going to take the customer service somewhere else. Okay, I'm going to finish. I think I'm running out of time. People who are happy, they bring new customers to the organization. People who are very satisfied with their experience, they advocate organization as a place to work and do business. So candidate journey starts from long before they actually apply for the job. They start with years, some people leave unsolicited CVs in their talent pool. How you actually engage with them, how you talk to them, how you look after them before they apply. So candidate nurturing is very important. This is candidate journey onward. This is the model that I'd like to present to all the employers. Okay, candidate journey starts from brand connection, from candidate experience, pre-starting time gap, starting time, onboarding, and the first day at work. So if you all get it right, we get amazing experience. People get an amazing experience, and you'll have somebody who's really happy to start with you. So a few more checklists. What should employer focus on to improve on? So again, some stats over here. I like some data. Unfortunately, Pakistani data is not available, but it's relatable. We're talking about people having clear, more accurate information about the job responsibility, more transparency about the cons and benefits, more transparent about improved communication between the interviews and job application process, workplace environment. These all things makes a huge difference. लोग कब चाहते हैं information को कम मिले? वो चाहते हैं कि compensation की information उनको जो है right at the time of application मिले. They want the benefits to be during the initial interview process, company culture during the interview process, and this next step in the hiring process during the interview process. So they want to have all of this information at these stages. Virgin Media case study कर रहे थे. The guy went on to get the executives on board the why candidate experience matters. He retrained their managers to gold standard interview process, made a priority, a candidate experience a company priority, and as a result he found out कि जो customer $500 में आते थे marketing, traditional marketing के through, अगर हम अपने जो candidates को properly and positively treat करें, it can be as cheaper as $50. So it has a huge impact not only on the image of the organization, but the profitability of the organization as well. So take away from the employers today, or the HR colleagues, okay, they get in touch, develop a relationship with the rejected candidates, make sure they're looked after, deliver the news, give them feedback, ask for the feedback, connect with social media. I still get the newsletter from the organization who are actually did not selected. Saudi Aramco still send me messages, send newsletter ki kya ho raha. And just a small checklist, okay, how do we actually create a positive experience for our candidates? I'll make the presentation available for whoever wants, they can take away, or if they want to get in touch, talk more about it, I can share the data. जो मेरे sources हैं data की, I can share that as well for takeaway. Okay, thank you very much.